Thank you for joining me here at the Real ResQ podcast for this episode. It's powered by Vertical Helicast, with a special shout out and thank you to our sponsor for this episode, Breeze Eastern. They design and manufacture the rescue hoist, winches, cargo hooks, and weapons handling systems for military and civilian operators' needs to make the impossible mission possible. Check them out today at breeze-eastern.com. And Switlick Survival Products. Switlick manufactures the highest quality safety and survival products for the aviation, marine, and military markets. Check them out today at switlick.com. Now, coming up next in this episode, we are joined by one of the guys who helps create the United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer program. He tells us a bit of his side of the story, what he had to do to help make it happen. So please welcome United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 3, Mr. Rick Woolford. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Real ResQ podcast. Today I've got an extra special guest with me because this is one of the first 3. That's right, United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 3, Mr. Rick Woolford. What's up, Rick?
Hey there. Good morning, Quinny. How are you?
Man, I am fantastic. It is a true honor to have you on here. It's been awesome. I've had now you're actually my number 3 out of the first 5 that came on. How funny is that? So
That's true. Yeah, you already got Ober and Gordon. Yes.
No, I haven't gotten Gordon yet, but I did it. I get
you got
Butch
Ober
Flights.
and Butch. That's right.
That's right.
Flight.
That's right. So I've been jumping around a little bit, but now I get you, so I'm excited. So it's good.
Okay.
That's awesome. So thank you so much for coming on. I'm looking at a true legend right now. You're the founding father of the U.S. Coast Guard Rescue Swimmers. This is amazing. So thank you. Thank you for enduring everything to get me allow me to come in behind you to be a swimmer.
Just glad it lasted because it was hard getting funding and we weren't sure how long it was going to last. So I'm glad it went this far.
Yeah, you guys did a great job for sure. Well, I'll tell you what, Rick, let's dive right into this, man, because I'm so excited to hear a little bit about your background. And actually, I'm gonna throw out a little teaser into everybody because you sent me the original solicitation letter request from the Coast Guard looking for swimmers. So we're gonna touch on that in a little bit. But Rick, give us a little background. Where are you from? What brought you into the Coast Guard and into aviation? Because we'll dive into swimmer here in a little bit.
Okay, I'm going to kind of start at the end. So just to introduce myself. So Rick Woolford, living in Central Florida, 27 years Coast Guard, 17 years helicopter air ambulance pilot. Central Florida as in Winter Haven, Florida, about an hour west of Orlando, 45 minutes from the front gates of Disney. So that's where I live now. Married for 44 years, 3 boys. And they're all older now, and we'll slip them in there a little later, what they do.
Nice.
Okay, so how did I get in the Coast Guard? All right, so growing up in Orlando, I was into Boy Scouts. So I was introduced to a lot of water type things. I lived near lakes, so I had just about every water merit badge you could have, so very comfortable in the water. Had all those Red Cross swimming badges that you get, because I pretty much lived in the swimming pool down the street during the summertime. And then later on, I got into law enforcement exploring, which introduced me to law enforcement and EMT type stuff. I learned how to shoot guns from a retired Navy Master Chief Gunner's mate. So I was on the pistol team. I was in the band for 6 years. So the lead in here is the boot camp. So I was in the band for 6 years. So I knew how to march, knew how to stand at attention. So yeah, I was around the water, pretty comfortable in the water. Joined the Coast Guard because of law enforcement primarily, I think, but I like the aspect of the rescue, rescuing people. At that point, I don't think I was a lifeguard. I might have had the life-saving merit badge and went to summer camp and did the mile swim and all that kind of stuff. But I wasn't an official like pool lifeguard or anything like that. But went to signed up for the Coast Guard. Took about a year and a half to get in because they just did not need anyone at that time.
Oh.
So my uncle got involved and kind of sped up the process and said, why aren't you taking this young man? He really wants to go serve his country. You're missing out here if you don't take him. So finally got in, went Cape May, New Jersey. And here's a little bit of a funny story. So went through Philadelphia airport, ran into a guy who just got out of boot camp, but he's a seaman. So he decided to pull me aside and give me all this advice on how to survive boot camp. He's like, whatever you do, don't volunteer for anything. And I'm like, Roger that. And so I check into boot camp, and it's a scary place when they first get a hold of you, of course. They make you fill out an index card to tell them what your skills are, if you have any. And they ask if you played a musical instrument. And I was like, man, this is the part where I really shouldn't volunteer, but I don't want to be honest, So I wrote down yes. And then they said, we want you to audition. I said, I'm not interested. I'm thinking, don't volunteer for anything. I'm not. And they said, well, we're not really asking. You need to volunteer. It's for this.
Voluntold. Welcome to the military.
Yeah, so anyways, I ended up in the ceremonial band, which was a blessing in many ways because on the weekends when everybody else is doing KP duty and scullery duty and all that kind of stuff, we were on the road traveling, doing parades and concerts, and rode on buses most of the time because we were in the Northeast. But one time we got to fly in a C-130, which was probably my introduction to Coast Guard aviation. So that was pretty cool. And
oh my gosh.
Didn't have to go to firefighting school because we were busy doing some kind of event, which was probably good because firefighting on a ship is very scary. I got to go through it in OCS, and it was like, oh man, I'm glad I didn't have to do this earlier. Yeah. Did you go through firefighting?
So I don't. I mean, not on the ship. No, I was never on a ship. I went to DC first, and then I was aviation the rest of the time.
Well, in boot camp, they used to simulate like you're on a ship and it's on fire, and you go in these dark places and smokes everywhere, and you can't see, and you're holding on to your buddy. And I'm like, this is no fun whatsoever. So I didn't have to do that.
Yeah, I don't actually remember if I had to do that or not. I think I did, but I don't actually remember. It's kind of funny. It's terrible. Probably should remember that. But
so because of all the merit badges and stuff, I mean, I knew how to tie knots. Because of the band, I knew how to march. It was like I didn't know how to do anything with a rifle, but didn't have to do much with a rifle. Did know how to shoot a rifle, or knew how to shoot guns. Got all those medals for shooting. That was pretty easy. The instructor was kicking me in the ribs because I was on the slow fire. When you shoot competition, when you're shooting slow fire, you take your time. So I remember the instructor kicking me in the ribs, saying, "Woolford, come on, we can't do." He said, "Sir, you gave me 10 minutes. I'm taking 10 minutes. So 10 in the bullseye. Got the medals, and so that was the start of my career. Out of boot camp, they needed a couple of guys to go move the Coast Guard Bark Eagle from the academy to the yards in Baltimore because it was time for it to get overhauled. So
which is
I volunteered
cool.
for that.
Really quick side note: the Coast Guard Eagle is like what I believe it's the only flagship that we have with actual sails that they have to sail the ship from point A to point B. Is that right?
Well, it has a motor too. It has a motor, but it has a manned diesel in it. But yeah, it's 22 sails. It's a square rigged sailing bark is what it is. It was a war prize from the Germans after World War II. So
that's right. Yeah, it's a lot of the cadets, like the Coast Guard cadets, have to go on that for a season or a.
Well, they have to go after first year, during first year, and after that, I think they volunteer if they want to go on some longer trips. So yeah, the guys that are bragging are the ones that all 4 years they got to go somewhere on the Eagle. But it was unusual for enlisted people to do anything on it unless they were part of the ship's crew. So I was stoked about that. That was pretty cool. So they taught us over the weekend how to raise all the sails and do things on a sailing ship. And then we took it, to Baltimore. And of course, they have to show it off when they go somewhere. So I got to enjoy some of what the cadets enjoy. When you get into port, you get to shine everything that's brass. So everything that was brass, we got to shine for like 6 hours, I felt like. So then we showed people the ship, and then we took it on to Baltimore. Another cool part, when we started stripping the ship down for it to go in the yards, we had to pull off all the things that said Eagle because we were concerned they would disappear. So when you pull the things off that say Eagle, it says Horst Wessel underneath, which was the original name of the ship. And I'm
Oh,
thinking, wow,
wow.
I would think people would steal that more than they would steal Eagle. We can get another Eagle plaque, but yeah, it was kind of cool to see the history of that. So well, it's different now for ASTA school, but ASMA school couldn't get in right away. Maybe there were some A schools you could get into, but I put in for ASMA school because of the parachute rigger part of it, and went to a Coast Guard cutter in Hawaii. That was my first tour. So I was on a 180-foot buoy tender. The day I stepped onto the buoy tender, I saw these dive tanks and this compressor, and I went, what is all that? Because I heard the Coast Guard doesn't have any scuba divers. Well, who'd you hear that from? I said, well, a Navy recruiter said the Coast Guard doesn't have it, so come join the Navy. I said, obviously you have divers. She goes, oh yeah, we have buoy divers. This only, this ship and the ship in Guam, buoy tenders, and then the icebreakers have divers. And I'm like, well, I'm interested in that because I was already a diver civilian. And they said, well, we'll see. We'll see how well you do. So after being on the ship about 6 months and qualified and everything I could be qualified on the ship, the boom operator, coxswain, small boat coxswain, helmsman, I was on for the watch quarter station bill. I was up on the bridge, which is better than being other places during drills. So I got to do some cool stuff there. But so anyways, they said, Woolford, we need you to go to dive school. So it was at Pearl Harbor, which was also very neat. So I
Oh,
went to
wow.
basics, it's just called basic scuba school, 4 weeks. So went to scuba school and then went back to the ship and was that for a short while. A lot of my things were very short lived because something else would come along. So my orders came in for A school. And the captain called me up to his office and said, Wolford, I see we have orders here for ASMA school, and I see that you have to jump with a parachute. Do you still want to do that? I said, yes, sir. I do want to do that. He goes, well, I own you for a year because I just sent you to dive school. I'm like, oh, no. And he says, but if you're willing to jump with a parachute and you really want to go do this, I'll let you go because I did a good job on the ship. So I was off to
Oh,
Lakehurst, New
nice.
Jersey. Let me know when any of this is similar to Ober's because it was crazy. When I
No,
listened to
no.
his, there were some similarities there. I mean, there really was because he was in the honor company, different thing. He got to fly on a C-130, stuff like that. So, so go to PR school at Lakehurst, New Jersey, because we didn't have our own school at that time. And Ober told you about jumping his own chute and all that kind of stuff. Well, yeah, we packed our chute. We were ready to go, but the airplane was broken or the weather was bad. The one day they were both good, the pilots were missing. They were playing golf because they couldn't find them. So I was like, man, I'm not going to get to jump my chute. But there was a skydiving club on base, and they said, well, we're going to try to get you guys a jump. So they got a Marine Corps Reserve helicopter to come down, a CH-53. So my first jump was out of the back of a CH-53, a helicopter. So that was pretty cool. And
Oh,
I
my
don't know
gosh.
if that wasn't my first ride in a helicopter, but that was way cool being in a big helicopter, like and jumping out the ramp.
Oh,
So got to
that
do
is
that. So
awesome.
what a spelling, opportunity after opportunity. And then while I was at Lakehurst, I volunteered for the honor guard and all that stuff, more parades, more flag carrying, stuff like that. So I say the volunteer thing worked out pretty well for me. And then, of course, so graduated there, went to Air Station New Orleans, where they had H-3s at the time, became a flight mechanic, hoist operator, was put on the stand team there to help teach people how to do that. And then when I made I remember the chaplain in boot camp saying, don't get married until you at least make E5, because they had a lot of problems with junior personnel getting married and it didn't work out because they didn't have any money. So when
Yeah,
I made
I
E5,
can
I
totally
got
see that.
married. Yeah, I listened to the chaplain. When I made E5, I got married to Angie in New Orleans. So we had our first year there in New Orleans, and then I got orders to Clearwater. Slow me down if I'm going too fast. I'm afraid I'm going too slow. So,
No, no, you're not. Oh, although, you know
okay.
what? Let me ask this one question real quick is because you got down to New Orleans, got qualified as a flight mechanic. Uh, did you by chance get your very first rescue while you were down there?
Yes. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure of it. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember it
Because
by chance?
I remember a lot of searches. I don't remember the first rescue. I got EMT certified or qualified at the local college. So I know they used me as an EMT. So we go offshore, fishermen would get hurt, they get cut or something
Yep.
like that. I remember picking one guy up, and that's when I decided I don't like the smell of flesh or blood. I just didn't like that too much. No, so I was like,
Oh,
what have I
that's
gotten
funny.
myself into, But yeah, it is what it is. You're not supposed to unwrap the wound and look at it. You're supposed to just keep it wrapped up so it won't bleed. But I was curious, so I took a look. But so flew as an EMT. Did some cases as an EMT. Oh, I know one. Also EMT related. The Muriel boat lift for Cuba happened down in Key West. So they sent guys from all over the country to go man that up. And they had every kind of helicopter down there, I think every kind of airplane down there. So I went down as a flight mech. And I remember one day they said, "Hey, Woolford, aren't you an EMT?" I said, "Yes, sir." So you need to come with us. So it was a case offshore, another injured fisherman, bloody. We don't sew them up. We just keep them alive until we can get them back. But so I was able to use that skill again down in Key West. But
Wow.
I don't know, any hoisting cases? I mean, the usual stuff, delivering dewatering pumps to sinking boats, hoisting people off of vessels that might have been injured. And at that time, you just put the basket down and, they get in and you hoist them back up. Don't remember
Nice.
any water rescues. I remember a lot of searches for people in the water, but I don't remember finding anybody flailing around.
Okay. Now, when you went to get your EMT, was that a base requirement, or is that just you trying to be super proactive and highly motivated to go get that?
That was a carryover from that law enforcement explorer thing. Like, I either want
Oh,
to be a
okay.
cop or a firefighter or something like that. I just kind of like that kind of action. So it's something I wanted to do. And it was very popular back in the early 80s, the TV shows and all that kind of stuff. So it was a cool thing. But what
Right
can I
on.
say?
Okay.
Might have been influenced. Yeah. So yeah, I remember telling the wife, like, okay, I'm an EMT now. I want to go be a volunteer firefighter. I'm gonna go sign up for that. She goes, "No, you're not." I'm like, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "You're already standing duty for the Coast Guard. You're already helping people. What more do you want to do?" And I'm like, "Oh, I get your point. Yeah, I'll just be standing duty somewhere else or getting called out in the middle of the night. I get it." And we're newlyweds, so I'm like, "Okay, you win on this one."
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Smart man right there. Just
I'm
gonna
glad you slowed me down
throw
a
that
little
out
bit.
there.
Yeah, because some stuff happened, in New Orleans. I made an ASM2 in New Orleans, so went to Clearwater, much
Yep.
bigger shop. New Orleans, just small shop, 3 helicopters. We got the H-52 while I was there, but didn't get qualified in it. I don't even know if I flew in it, but so went to Clearwater, H-3s and C-130s. Continued doing the flight mech thing. Really liked helicopters. Continued doing the flight mech thing, and then in 1984 this message came out. I knew nothing about this thing starting. This message came out September 1984, looking for volunteers for this program. And now you can read that if you'd like.
Absolutely. This is so cool to me because again, I had never even seen this until you sent it to me. It's awesome. So, subject: rescue swimmer training solicitation for volunteers. 1. Applicants are sought for training as helicopter rescue swimmers at Navy Rescue Swimmer School, Naval Air Station, Pensacola, Florida. Applicants must be a graduate of ASM A School, which you had been. Command must certify applicants meet the following criteria: A. Current flight physical. Current wet drill. B. EMT qualified or hold a Red Cross or Heart Association CPR certificate and basic Red Cross first aid course graduate. C. Graduate of Navy Water Survival Instructor course or hold a current Red Cross WSI, which I don't know what that is. I bet
As
water
water
safety
safety
instructor.
instructor. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Or demonstrate the ability to swim 1 mile in a flight suit without boots in less than 60 minutes, and the next day swim 200 meters of a side stroke, 100-meter breaststroke, and 100-meter freestyle for a total of 400 meters in less than 12 minutes. D. Have 12 months required service remaining as of 1 January 1985. Oh my gosh. So that was the message that came out for all of you guys to say, hey, we want to start this program, and these are the requirements to go in. And just reading through that now, it's so funny to me thinking about some of this and where we are today. It's just
Oh,
even
yeah.
when
I mean,
I
it
went through,
really,
I'm like, holy cow.
it grew into something really big. Yeah, I looked at that list and I said, I don't think very many guys are going to have all this stuff. They could. So I don't know how
I
many
don't know
people
anybody that's ever
will
had this.
sign.
So
I don't know how
yeah.
many people signed up. I mean, they weren't looking for the whole list because I didn't have it all. Because I was an EMT, because I had that, and then I had some life-saving stuff, but I wasn't a WSI. If you remember, Steve Ober said he was part of the UER program with Daryl Jelikoska. They were going to travel the country and train this UER, so they went and got WSI. Him and Kelly got WSI qualified at Pensacola to start this program. So they had that. I believe he was an EMT before, so he had that. Kelly swam competitively, so he had that going for him. I think Matt Fithian swam competitively. Not sure about Butch. So I apply. I had the support of
Butch was
Master
just
Chief
hard
Walt.
headed. Butch was just not
Yeah,
ever gonna quit. That's all. I mean, and I can say that right now because he's not right on the other side of this computer right now.
yeah. He can't get to you. So yeah, I didn't go back and listen to his podcast. I have listened to it before, but I was amazed. He was on a buoy tender too. So I was like, wait a minute, I
Oh
didn't
yeah,
know the background of all these guys until I listened to some of this stuff. But Master Chief Waltz was the Master Chief on the hangar deck, and I wrote a chit and said I'd like to do this, and he's like, okay. So he supported me, and he wrote the message back that said Woolford has this, this, and this, and he'll get his life saving something. So I I guess I was in training for it. Yeah, I went and did the life saving qualification. Thank God, because there is no way I'd have made it through the swimming if I wasn't actually in the pool swimming. So, you had to swim the laps. You go swim the
yeah.
laps every night when you go to class, and then you do all the procedures and stuff. So that definitely helped. And having been through Navy dive school, I knew there was going to be calisthenics and running. So I started doing all that stuff. Didn't get it quite right. The calisthenics, the running, yes. The swimming, yes. Didn't throw any pull-ups in there. I don't know why. I should have probably done that. Other messages that came out, did it have pull-ups in that message? Did it say you
It
had to
did
do so
not.
many
Not in
pull-ups?
this one. No.
Some other message that came out in 85 where it was saying you have to go to rescue swimmer school or make chief or above to
You know
not go
what?
to
I'm
rescue swimmer
lying.
school.
I'm actually lying because it actually says it down a little further. Uh, expect to meet the following fitness standards before graduation: mile and a half run in less than 11 and a half minutes, 5 pull-ups, 25 push-ups, 30 sit-ups, and in 60 seconds. So that
Yeah, that's
was
nothing.
the
That's
requirement. Yeah.
funny, right? So yeah, 5 pull-ups is nothing. And I'm pretty sure when I got there it wasn't 5. I think it was 20, but um I had no upper body strength whatsoever. And that's probably the hardest part for me doing pull-ups. And what one exercise is probably the best for swimming? Pull-ups. I don't know, somehow it just skipped me. I didn't think to practice pull-ups. So me and a few other guys were practicing pull-ups every day just so we could qualify at the end. It wasn't 5. I know it wasn't 5. I think it was more like 20. But yet I was just a dead arm whenever I tried to hang on anything and get up. Swimming was
Oh, that's
okay. The
funny.
running was okay. I mean, I didn't really understand why they were doing all those calisthenics and running before they put you in the pool, because they just wore you down completely. You never had a chance to recover. It was every day the same thing. And consequently, I'll say this before I forget it, but consequently in OCS, best exercise program I've ever seen, because they alternate. One day you'll run, one day you'll swim, one day you'll do calisthenics. So your body has a chance to recover in between. But yeah, at Navy Rescue Swimmer School, you're just a limp noodle. I mean, I don't remember guys passing out necessarily. They probably weren't. In Navy dive school, there were guys passing out and throwing up on the run, but I just thought they were weak. Of like, come on, it's not that bad. But I was young. I was young, so I didn't have any consideration for E5s or E6s that couldn't do it. Um, anyways, ask your
I love it.
questions.
I love it. All right. So now, first question is going to be: other than the message, was there any other intel that you had prior to going into the Navy swimmer school?
No, I don't even think I called ahead. But
So it was like you go there and it was just game on. Like, all right, let's
yeah, well,
go.
it's
We're
like, yeah, I
running
mean,
10 miles.
I'd already been to Navy dive school, like I said, and I mean, I figured I had the Navy figured out. Went to Navy PR school, already been to 2 Navy schools. I thought I had those guys figured out, and how hard could it be? But I was a little older. I was 26 at that time and not
Yeah.
in that good a shape. Um,
So the other
so I
schools that
will.
you went through in comparison to swimmer school, was it at least similar? So I saying you had an idea of it. So obviously the other schools will PT and stuff prior to going in. And okay, you're gonna do a
Yeah,
run
I
and then
thought it
you're
would
gonna
be
do a
very
dive swim.
similar to Navy dive school. Navy dive school, you get in trouble for something, you do 50 push-ups, and they're always, if you get too far from your buddy, you have to put a hauser around both of your necks with a a loop spliced in it and run around with that thing all day. They harassed you is what I'm saying.
Love it.
The harassment at Navy Rescue Swimmer School at that time was a little bit above and beyond, I thought, to the point that one of the instructors pulled me aside and said, "Hey, you're a first-class petty officer. Maybe you could write about some of this stuff after graduation." And I said, "We'll see.
Wow.
We'll see." Because I'm a guest. We're Coast Guard at a Navy school. I'm a guest. I'm going to do it their way just to get through the training. I'm not there to blow up their school or cast any dispersions on them. Yeah, I mean, you go along to get along, right? And so,
cool.
you did what you had to do.
So after you graduated school, you went up to
Let me
Elizabeth
back up.
City. Sorry.
Let me back up. You did remind me of something with asking those questions. So the day I showed up was the same day that Steve Ober and Kelly Gordon were graduating. So they had just graduated and they're wearing their Class A's or their chops. And, they run into me in the passageway and they say, "Rick, the first time I ever met them ever, they were just a name on that list of 5. So, there's more. I already told you they had that extra. Yeah, they had that extra training. Okay, so good. So they see me. First thing Steve says is, "Rick, you got to get a haircut." I'm like, "Huh?" He says, "Look around." He said, "This is Navy Air Crew Training School. This is like boot camp. These guys are high and tight." And it was true. It's like, okay. So I had to go to this initial meeting, but after that, I, went and got a haircut right away. But, having said that it's Air Crew Training School, those guys had an edge up on any of the active duty guys that were coming to train at that school because they have been, I don't know, I'm going to say 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks for their air crew training. And they were running every day and doing calisthenics every day. And the guys that they chose for SAR school, which is what they called the rescue swimmer school, the guys they chose for SAR school were the guys that were comfortable in the water or did well on the swims. I don't think they volunteered. It's kind of like, you're going to SAR school. And that might have had something to do with their attrition rate because some of these guys didn't really want to be there. But there's some background about the Navy Rescue Swimmer School. But the Steve and Kelly didn't have enough time to say they couldn't prep me any more than that. They'd get a haircut. That was their advice. Get a haircut and good luck. Yeah.
Don't quit. Love it. Oh gosh, I love it. All right, so now when you graduate, you go to Elizabeth City, North Carolina, right? Because that's where they really stood up the very first air station.
Yes. So, all 5 of us graduated, got orders to Elizabeth City, went to Elizabeth City, and then in January of '85, we all went back to Pensacola for a big conference. And they pulled in all kind of people for that conference. They pulled in all the guys that made this happen from headquarters. Ken Coughlin, I don't know if his boss was there, the guy that wrote the message and did all the planning. But we brought in pilots from Elizabeth City, pilots from Mobile, pararescue guys from Eglin. So the Air Force was represented as PJs. Brought a really excellent guy named Guy Parent down from Canada. He was a SAR tech. And then, of course, the Navy rescue swimmer guys showed up too, because we're going to look at all their procedures. We're going to look at their equipment. I guess we were also looking at their attitude. We weren't there to do that necessarily, but we looked at the SAR tech from Canada, and he was like cool, calm, professional, quiet, professional kind of guy. The PJ guys were a little bit over the top, but they had all the cool tools. They had great equipment and a really big knife. They had a big knife, so that made them cooler. So we looked at all the different techniques. The Navy technique is to free fall from the helicopter. They call it a day deployment, and then night they use the sling deployment. And the Canadians would stay attached, because Canadians had cold water, they had swift water rescue, things like that. So they had a direct rescue technique. And we looked at that. We took that information back to East City with us, and we looked at their equipment. So what was decided by everybody, obviously not us at our level, but what was decided by the higher ups is we're going to use the Navy equipment. We're going to use the Navy techniques for now. The Navy had an accident recently where somebody got tangled up in the cable and got hurt pretty bad. And they said, we'd rather do it detached. We'd rather detach from the cable or free fall into the water and do it free and get back. And I think that's what really concerned most of the pilots when we were getting started. It's like, you want me to put this guy in the water by himself? And they weren't some of them weren't like that. You've heard that before, I know. And
yes,
it's in Martha LaGuardia's
It's actually one of my favorite. Well, it's one of my favorite conversations because a lot of people around the world do not come off the hook. and I know specifically like the UK doesn't, the French don't. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting all my spots now. That's terrible. Ireland doesn't. Portugal doesn't. They stay on the hook. That's what they do, and it's great. But I like the option of getting off, and I think I like the option of getting off because that's one how we were trained, and I'm very comfortable. Like I'm comfortable in doing that. The fact that those heads up guys were at the time said, "Yeah, go ahead, get off, cool."
Well, if you did it all the time, you might be hesitant to get off the hook, and sometimes you got to get off the hook. Like you had in your rescue, you had to get off the hook because you're tangled up in it, right? So,
right.
So you dealt with it, right? Got it under control.
The fact that you remember that just brings a tear to my eye. Thanks, Rick. I'm so happy. Oh my gosh.
Helps me think to interject these things. Yeah.
We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Switlik. No mission is the same. Why should your suit be? Introducing a new custom dry suit experience. Choose your fabric, colors, neck and wrist seals, zippers, pockets, collars, and so much more. Intelligent measuring prompts ensure the most tailored fit. Brought to you by Switlik Survival Products. For more information, visit us at www.switlik.com.
So Larry Farmer. And so Larry Farmer was selected to be like the first stand team guy. So, they needed a leader at East City enlisted to keep an eye on us guys. And, the stand team was at East City. For the reason that the whole thing was at East City the first time, Elizabeth City, was because they had a number of rescues in the water there. And, when they looked at the numbers, they said, this is a good place to put it. Plus the C-130 stand team was there. I don't know what that has to do with it, but I read about that. The C-130 stand team was there. So then the rescue swimmer stand team was there. And Larry at that time, at the beginning, was at Oklahoma City. He was the subject matter specialist for ASM. And he was chosen be first stand team, and he came to East City later. I mean, he was at the conference with us in January, but I don't know when he showed up to Elizabeth City, maybe February, March, or something like that. But okay, I had to throw his name in there. He's been with it for so long. And he eventually went up to headquarters. He was like rescue swimmer project manager in headquarters enlisted level for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years.
I think he was actually in that position even when I came in as a young swimmer. I graduated in 2000, so it would have been around that time if he was there. I can't remember if it was him or Scott Dyer. I can't remember who. I remember Scott being in there for a little while.
Scott might have replaced him. I don't know. So the rest, so anyways, at East City.
Yeah.
Larry shows up. He's a stand guy. We're looking at all the equipment. We're trained. It's wintertime, so it's cold. So we're doing all this training in wetsuits and stuff, and it's like, holy cow, it just was too cold. So they got us some dry suits. I think it was, I can't remember what company it was at the time, but they got us some dry suits. The Navy didn't have dry suits. The Coast Guard was taking care of us. And we were going to go implement cold water units first. So it's like, we're getting dry suits. So, headquarters made that happen. Larry made that happen. And then Larry wanted somebody else on the stand team with him. So he chose me. So Larry and I were the first rescue swimmer stand team to travel around the country and start implementing the units. I don't know that everybody was happy with that in the shop because some of them wanted to be on the stand team as well. I won't mention names, but I get it. They signed up for this thing and they thought there might be more to it. Anyways, they were the first 5. So we're all okay. Elizabeth City was the first unit that we stood up. So we looked at all the procedures. Oh, we even did the staying on the cable. The way the Canadians did it, they stayed on the cable and they dragged their fins through the water. Like the hoist operator put them down close to the water. The fins are in the water, and then drag them over to the victim so you can get the victim, which made sense because we found out if you're just dangling from the helicopter, you kind of start spinning and bad things happen. So we tried it. Kelly reminded me of that. So we tried that, and we decided to just go with the Navy stuff. And like I said, it was called day deployment, night deployment. So Master Chief Armor and I don't want to get this out of order. Let me just say, okay, so we stood up in Elizabeth City. I wrote this down. 1985. I'm going to think. March. I'm going to say March 1985. We stood up in Elizabeth City. So we're active. Pilots are trained. Flight mechs are trained. Dave Dingley was a exchange pilot from the Air Force. He helped with the training. I think he was the rescue swimmer officer at the base. Hugh O'Darty had done a tour with Canada, so he knew all about how to work with SARTEC. So he was really, really good. He was at the conference also at Mobile in Pensacola, so he had a lot of good ideas. And we actually had one guy that used to swim for Florida State, and he says, "You guys are training all wrong." And we're like, "What do you mean?" He's like,
love it.
Of course, you got to know everybody. This is new to everybody. So if you gave them an in, they had an idea to help you out, right? Especially during the implementation at all the units, it's like you have to go give these presentations, and you're just hoping everybody sits there and doesn't ask a question or, get too involved with what we're doing, because we're kind of set. We've decided this is what we're doing. But this guy that used to swim with Florida State says, "You guys are training for aerobic type stuff, long distance running, long swimming." He says, "What you do for a rescue is anaerobic." And he was absolutely right. He says, "You're cold, like your muscles are cold. You get in the water and it's a burst of swimming to go do this rescue." And he says, that's anaerobics. That's a way you need to train. So we changed the training up a little bit. So we do the burst of thing. And of course, nowadays, oh my gosh, it's just wild.
Oh.
What do you tell me why they do the brick? What is the bricks all about? Is that to learn how to hold your breath underwater or what?
I like right now, I don't know exactly what the training is like, but when I went through in 2000, 99 and 2000, brick was a lot of the to get comfortable underwater. So it was that you almost have to concentrate on something underwater, and as you're moving the brick and then working with your partner. So it's just that building water confidence. That's all it is.
Okay. I've heard that they can use that to help you hold your breath longer because it keeps you down, but I don't know. I've never trained with a brick. So
I think it's more of like just it's doing a mind job to you. So if you're thinking about something else, you're not thinking about the fact that you're running out of air. So it's that now you're doing something underwater with a brick or with whatever it is you have. And that's my
I think what they're looking for too, they're looking for people who are comfortable in the water. When you put them in a tense situation, the attrition rate's still pretty high, but you're looking for people who can be comfortable in the water. They have said that people who were surfers or played water polo before did very well becoming swimmers. Of course, the surfer guys used to working with themselves. One of the things that bothered me was going in the water by myself. I'd never, ever done any water activity by myself. It was all the Boy Scouts stressed the buddy system, the scuba diving stressed the buddy system, Navy dive school stressed the buddy system. All of a sudden, we're throwing somebody in the water and not attached. On the ships or the Coast Guard cutters, if you were a rescue swimmer, you stayed tethered. You were attached with a line to the ship. So, you were never swimming free. So that did kind of bother me a little bit. That was in the back of my mind for sure. Because at that time we had no way to rescue you if the hoist fouled up.
Right.
We did have a plan. If the helicopter had to leave, we had a plan to throw a raft out. Had your little rescue swimmer raft. You might use the same one. I don't know.
No, I think they're different now because the original ones were like literally flat. And it looked like a little I can't even think of it, but it was a flat bottom, and it was like a little river tube or like a boat. Like who's out of it? That's what it was originally. Used,
like World War II, a raft that comes out of your ejection seat or something. That's what it reminded me of.
That's exactly. Yeah. But it was flat, so now it's like concave, so your butt actually sits down into the raft itself, and then it kind of fills with water, so you create your own drag in the, and you still have a drogue chute and stuff and attached to it, but
okay. I don't know that I've seen that raft before. I have to see that. Yeah. So we stayed with the Navy equipment, which included that HBU 11 harness, which you have no idea what that is. But the harness only helps.
I do know. I just thank God, thank you so much that I never had to use it. I am very familiar with it because it was in the shop when I showed up there. They're like, "This is what we used to use," and I'm like, "Thank God I don't have to use that."
That's probably museums now. Yeah, no kidding. Didn't make a lot of sense because you have the fins on your feet and all, like a little bit more weight on your lower body. But yeah, when you're going down in the hoist and the hoist stops suddenly, your back's going to crack for sure because it's just all your lower body weight's hanging from that harness. So that's what the Navy used. That's what the Marine Corps used. So that's what we used. That's what they gave us. And then a SAR-1 vest, of course. And that probably changed as well. But I think a lot of guys have injuries from that HBU 11 harness. So thank goodness somebody came up with that other. It might have been Sam Manis with Life Saving Systems Corporation. He's always making stuff. So, that new harness that you guys use, I don't know. You tell me. You were with Priority 1 and everything. Where's that harness come from?
So the Triton harness specifically came from LSC. Now I don't know who designed it. Sam may have designed it. I know it was designed by a Coast Guard rescue swimmer when they were moving out away from the SAR-1, and that was the harness that we started going to. Now they have the Triton, which is the next generation, which is even nicer. Still to this day, one of my favorite harnesses that I've ever used. Just the comfort. It's so comfortable, and the way it rides, like your legs take the majority of the blunt, even if you get jerked off the ground or out of the water. So
you're sitting
anyway.
in this thing like a parachute harness, right? You're
Yeah.
sitting in this like a parachute harness, so it's taking the weight. Yeah, and you can still swim in it. That's what's amazing. So it was designed for. It's probably Sam designed the first. I'll give him credit. All right, he has a great shop down in Apollo Beach. Yeah. All right, so so we're looking at equipment. You know, the guys all type A personalities volunteered for this program. They all have ideas. I get it. You know, it's so thank God for Master Chief Farmer, because everybody be hitting with these ideas. No, we're not doing that. No, we're not doing that. No, we're not doing that. Ober comes up with this watch. No, you can't buy the watch. We're not paying for that. You know, we have a limited budget. We're lucky to have this, you know. And so the fins, we did change the fins because they give you a rocket fin, US Diver rocket fins. That's another interesting point. So when I was diving civilian and Navy dive school and rescue swimmer school, they all the same equipment. I always had the same equipment, including the Tri-View mask. And that is what I use to this day when I go snorkeling. I just went back to it because the Scuba Pro mask was leaking. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. Every time I showed up to a school, they're handing me all new equipment. I'm like, okay, this is the stuff I used before I got in the Coast Guard. So the rocket fin is a very stiff fin. I mean, you're in shape, so you can use it, and it propels you through the water very well. But the Scuba Pro jet fin, same design, but much more forgiving on the tip. So we went to Scuba Pro jet fins for some of us. We looked at the fin with the plastic blade, you know, like the clear plastic blade. We were concerned that it would separate from the rubber foot part because you're jumping out of the helicopter into the water. So because of that impact, I think we might have tried it. It was lighter fin. You got good propulsion. We just didn't think it was going to last for what we do. So there you go. There's some equipment stuff I threw in there. Okay.
I love it. So it's actually kind of fun because, well, and those guys, even now, they're continuing to evaluate gear all the time, which I absolutely love. And I personally have used, oh gosh, at least 5 different types of fins coming out of the aircraft. And it's funny. I think about it now. I still go back to my jet fins. I absolutely love them, and they're not the greatest on the market, but I love them. And one of them that I had gone to at one point, I jumped out of the helicopter and the whole fin came off my foot. And I'm like, when I hit the water, boop, right off my foot. I'm like, well, that didn't work. Those are junk. So
with a certain, yeah.
I've
gone to some in my old age. I've gone to just training fins, little short travel fins, because I don't have the legs anymore. And it's just to get you through the water a little bit if you need a little kick, you know. So it doesn't hurt you.
Exactly.
It doesn't hurt you, but it gets you going. But the rocket fin was great for scuba diving because you get a lot of power out of that thing. And that's what they were used for, I think, predominantly. I don't think it was a great snorkeling fin, but it lasted forever. So where are we?
Heck, I still use it. I like it. So
we got 2 people on the stand team. We're still evaluating equipment. Everybody's standing duty. We stood up in Elizabeth City in March. I'm going to say March. We said everybody's waiting to use the tool. So at that time, we have H-3 helicopters. They're amphibious. So we can still send a basket down. If the guy can climb in, he climbs in. We can, if the water's calm enough, we can still land on the water, do a platform pickup. You know, and some of the pilot and crew are like, we're never going to use these guys. It's like, when are we going to use these guys? I said, well, we're going to use them when somebody's in the water that's hypothermic and can't get in the basket by themselves, or when the sea state is too high to land the helicopter on the water, right? So that's what Congress mandated it for. So I happened to be the guy on duty, got the first rescue. So it was daytime.
First rescue ever as a U.S. Coast Guard rescue swimmer.
I will say in this program, you know, in this congressionally mandated rescue swimmer program of 1984, yes, I got the first rescue because we know there's others out there, right? That tried some things in San Francisco. Did some things, you know, Rick, they did some things in San Francisco.
You get it though.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I can throw that in there.
You know what? Actually, before you talk about that, because you just mentioned San Francisco, I do remember hearing about San Francisco trying to do. As a matter of fact, Admiral Crossing coming on here, and he had told about them trying to do something because the water temperature was so cold out in the San Francisco Bay that they were just getting people that could deploy out of a Coast Guard helicopter like a swimmer, but it was only that unit specific. So it kind of just it fell off. So
No,
I don't know that.
Early 70s, it was called the SARWET program. And we had a few instances where they'd have to send the co-pilot down or an extra crewman down because they didn't have anybody to go in the water. So they stood up this SARWET program in San Francisco. And then some of those guys moved to other units, and they did it again in Brooklyn, I think. They had some, I don't know if they called themselves SARWET in Brooklyn. I think Hugh O'Darty might have been a part of that. But these were unit specific, not funded by the Coast Guard. Had to take it out of your unit budget. And they were trying to get something going, and it just didn't stick, So they tried to get it going again at headquarters. This guy's name's escaped. I feel so bad. I should have written all these names down. But planning, and the guy in planning was trying to get this going before the Marine Electric case happened. And then the Marine Electric case happened. Congress mandated the Coast Guard will have rescue swimmers. Make it happen. Do we have money for that? Well, no, but we'll try to get you some money. So they got us some money in 1984 appropriations, 1985, 86. Okay, so we're getting long-winded here. Let me move along here.
Yeah, that's all right. Okay. I like I said, I just wanted to kind of recap that because like I'm giving you full credit. You were the first rescue swimmer to do a rescue swimmer deployment and a rescue after the rescue swimmer program was up and running. But yeah, for a little caveat, history buff, there was two kind of swimmer type programs, one in San Francisco, and now I'm learning in Brooklyn. That's pretty cool. So okay, back to you.
Pretty sure. First, I'm old, so I forget some things, but
it's all good. It's more information than I have.
Okay, daytime rescue. What happened? A squall came through. There was a fishing tournament over at the Alligator River. There's a lot of water around Elizabeth City. There's the Pasquotank River plus a lot of other tributaries, and it's a great place for fishing and hunting, bird hunting and stuff. So a lot of sportsmen in that area. So there was some kind of fishing tournament going on. Squall came through. The call came in from somebody going across a bridge that saw boats capsize, people in the water in the Alligator River. So they called us, and I think I was all dressed out, ready to go, because I think we wore our wetsuits at that time. I don't think we dressed out later, but maybe that's a cold weather thing. I don't know, or a cold water type thing. So yeah, we're dressed, ready to go in the wetsuit, and so we go out there, and of course, rescue swimmers last resort. So we find the guy in the water. As just one guy, I believe. So we find a guy in the water. He has a life jacket on. So the flight mechanic sends the basket down. The guy won't go anywhere near it. Put it right next to him. He just won't. He doesn't want to get in the basket, and we're not sure why. So it's like, Woolford, you're up. Free fall deployment. It's like awesome. Everything I trained for. So free fall deployment, swim over to the guy. Turns out he's holding on to his submerged boat. That's why he wouldn't get in the basket. He's not letting go of anything because he's afraid he's going to die, right? So I get it. So it's like, this is before Top Gun. I actually said, sir, you've got to let go. Something to that. Like, sir, you've got to let go. So he did, dragged him over to the basket, put him in the basket, and the basket recovered me and him back to the station. And he was hypothermic. I guess the lesson learned at that time, this is all brand new. So we learned that gasoline in the water is bad, because I swallowed some of that. So that was in the report, kind of like, oh yeah. Wow, how about that? When boats sink, gasoline and oil's in the water. Yeah. So that was all in the report. But it was, fight like you train. It was clockwork. It was, we just did it and came back, and done. In the books. That was the first rescue. Not offshore.
With a free fall of that. That's freaking awesome.
Not the dark and stormy, none of that. But it was the first, yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. That is so cool. I love it. You actually stayed as a swimmer for a couple of years. So actually, until what, 1987? So
87. My duty standing days were short-lived as a swimmer because I went on the stand team with Master Chief Farmer, and we traveled around the country to implement the first units. So we were fully funded in 85. So we implemented E-City, and then in November we implemented San Francisco in the H-52, by the way. So I got to jump out of the H-52 as well. we traveled with the stand team from Mobile. So their pilots and their flight mechanics, would go on these trips just to implement the swimmer. So all of us got to stand up there and say our thing. Ken Coughlin would get up there and say, I'm the nameless, faceless bastard from headquarters is going to launch this new program with you guys, to kind of get them to chill out, because half of them were like, we're not doing this. It's like they weren't liking it. So we got all these other techniques. Why do we need this? I said, well, we got this new helicopter coming called the H-65 that can't land on the water, for one thing. It's like, oh, yeah, maybe so. And San Francisco was going to get it. So subsequently, when San Francisco did get the 65, we had to go back out and retrain, stand them up in the 65. So that's when I jumped out of the 65 at Mobile to train for it, but then we went out and re-implemented San Francisco with the 65 later. So in January 86, we were fully funded. However, we weren't. Something happened where Mobile couldn't help us anymore. They got pulled from the program. So we had to use unit pilots, unit flight mechs, and myself as a flight mech to go do the implementation. So in 86, we did Astoria, in Clearwater, and Sitka, Alaska. And we did have the dry suits by then, so thank goodness we did for Sitka. And, they wanted, I don't know why they did Clearwater so early, because we really wanted to do the colder water units first, because we wanted to save some lives, because of the hypothermia thing. So Cape Cod, 86. And then in 87, funding was no funding, shut it down. Like, didn't shut it down, but we just didn't have any funding. So Larry and I, just kept, I got to throw this guy's name in here. Okay. So this is very important. So remember I said day deployment, night deployment? That was the Navy terminology for how we got in the water. So we're working with the, I'm going to say H-52 unit at Mobile, and Al Gaston, who was also a former Canadian exchange pilot who worked with Sartex. He, Larry wrote this manual. The rest of us cut on it all the time to get it right. Headquarters approved it. And then, so Al takes this manual home over the weekend, because we're usually there for 2 weeks. He comes back and says, I've rewritten the rescue swimmer manual. And we're like, well, you can't do that. What do you mean? You can't do that. Remember I said everybody had ideas, right? Well, this guy just decides to rewrite the rescue swimmer manual. He said, well, it doesn't flow correctly. Let me show you what I've done. So he changes it to free fall deployment and sling deployment, because there's times where he would use the sling deployment other than nighttime deployment. And, after we got over having our feelings hurt, it was like, he's right. This makes more sense. So he rewrote certain sections of the rescue swimmer manual, and that was adopted. So to this day, I believe we call it, do we not call it free fall? Yep. What do we call it?
Yeah, free fall.
Free fall, sling, and direct deployment, right? And direct deployment.
Yep.
So direct deployment came along later after some rescues proved that we needed that type of rescue. And Daryl Jellicosko was all over that. So he can talk to you about that. Yeah.
The fact that and you got to think about that for a second, because when you guys wrote that in there to begin with, it's still following that today. I mean, that's like, it's not like it's, that term just doesn't work anymore. No, it still works, and we still use it. It's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, Ken Coughlin was the rescue swimmer program manager and EMT program manager, and he was understaffed in headquarters. So I give him a lot of credit for letting Larry write the manual. So I want to say Larry and I wrote the manual, because that's what we did all day long, is cut on this manual and try to get it right with input from the guys downstairs as well. We were upstairs, so the guys in the shop, got their input and stuff like that. But yeah, Larry wrote that manual, and it does stand today.
Yeah.
All right, ask me a question.
Okay,
or say something.
Rick, oh my God, I'm loving this. This entire history lesson is amazing to me. I absolutely love it. All right, so while you had 2 years, so you didn't stay on duty too much because you had so much going on. Why did you leave? I mean, I get you get an opportunity to go OCS and go out, but I mean, you're traveling all over the country, jumping out of helicopters. I mean, how cool is that?
It's way cool, but I get bored easily. I'm not going to say I was bored of that necessarily. That was a great opportunity. But when I was in ASM-1 at Clearwater, they were getting ready to send me to Miami. And I was like, I already had this all figured out. I'm kind of like, I was going to go be a recruiter or something. It was just like, I just needed a change of pace. And then the swimmer program came along. So, okay, I'll do that, sign up for it, see if I get selected. And I did. So that was cool. But there was always something else going on. I was trying to become a warrant officer. So I was trying for that a couple times. I had applied for OCS a number of times. I had the same situation that Ober had, where you got to have a certain amount of college and upper level math courses and recommendations from people and stuff like that. So I was on the rescue swimmer sand team in '87, where we weren't doing much because we didn't have the funding. So we weren't implementing anybody in '87. And I got this phone call saying, you've been selected for OCS, but you need to be here in 2 weeks. I'm like, yes. I said yes without asking anybody.
Wow.
Because it's like I've been waiting for the phone call. I said yes, and Master Chief's sitting right there. And he's like, yeah, thumbs up. Yeah. And I'm totally stoked. I said, yes. Hang up the phone. I'm doing push-ups. And it's like, I am just out of my mind, excited. I am going to OCS. And then, of course, we got to get it through the CO and everybody. But, thankfully, we were slow. We didn't have any funding in '87. I think that's why they let me go, because they certainly didn't have to. They supported me. I mean, obviously, to put the package in and all that. But it's like, Woolford's going to OCS. So went to OCS, made it through there. Oh, and I was a chief petty officer by then. So that's another correlation with Steve Ober. He was also a chief petty officer when he went to OCS.
I love it.
Is that weird? When he was saying all his stuff, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So he was an EMT. He was chief petty officer.
Did you walk in with your anchors on as well? Just out of curiosity.
I laughed so hard when I heard that. And that is typical Steve right there. That is typical Steve. And
one day, just for the first day.
When I showed up, we had like 3 or 4 chiefs there that were now cadets, and they had a special meeting for us. They pulled us aside in a room and said, tell you what, guys, he said, we just had a hell of a time with the last class and the chief petty officers trying to take over and not listening to what we said. And they said, you guys either want to be here or you don't, but you're not. They said, you are, but you're not a chief petty officer anymore. Now you're a cadet. If you can't do it the way we do it, then you need to leave now. And I'm like, Roger that. I get it.
Wow.
It was kind of like being a guest at Rescue Swimmer School. I'm a guest at OCS, and my goal is to get through. Whatever you need, I'll give it to you. So
that's cool.
Made it through OCS, applied for flight school. You have to take a test. I knew things about aircraft because I was a flight mech, and I was a trainee on the C-130. They asked you questions about airframe surfaces and rudders and different things. So, that was a pretty easy test. Some nav stuff maybe to see if you know how to navigate, but got selected for flight school. After the physical was the hardest thing to get through because you had to have good eyes back then. Your eyes darn good. Yeah. So I went for the flight school thing. I don't know what I was thinking. I was pretty old by then. I was a 30-year-old ensign at flight school. And it's like everybody, this ensign walks in.
Come on, Rick. It's old.
My peer group at flight school is like 22, right out of the academy, going to flight school. Here's this 30-year-old ensign. Yeah. I was older than the instructors. I was older than most of the instructors. They were like, oh my gosh, who's this guy? And why are you here? So I don't want to be a helicopter pilot. So made it through flight school, and then I'm going to kind of wind this up. Got to do a couple of tours in Sitka, Alaska, which was great. I kept going. So my first tour was Clearwater, which was great because we.
Do you remember your first? Do you remember your first rescue as a pilot?
I would think so, but I really don't. I don't know, because I was already doing that kind of stuff. I was just doing it up front. You're looking for people, you find people, you hoist people, you give them a pump. I don't know. It was all just what we do. So I go to Clearwater, H3s. We did have that storm of the century or something in '93, which was some demanding hoisting that we did. It was people in the water kind of thing. Had to find them, had to hoist them out of the water. I think I got an achievement medal for that or so. I don't know. But
nice.
So, NVGs. So you'll appreciate this, having flown in Alaska. Alaska's dark, right? Way dark. Yeah. So Clearwater had NVGs. So from the moment I started as a Coast Guard pilot, I was trained to do night vision goggles or use night vision goggles. And we used them in the Bahamas. And it's just the way it was. So I get up to Alaska. They don't have night vision goggles. And of course, the people that never had them before said, we don't need those. We used to fly H3s up here, with no night vision goggles, minimal radar, bad navigate, Loran or something. I don't know, Omega and Loran for navigation. I said, well, that's not what we're flying now. We're flying 60s. We got a better GPS. But I couldn't believe the guys coming from Clearwater that went to Kodiak or Sitka were like, "You don't have goggles?" So they didn't. But a year later, we finally did get them. Because man,
That's
it was
funny.
dark. You go out there and do those night trainers offshore, and
Yeah.
it's like you can't see anything.
Yeah.
So anyways,
Yeah,
do that in
nothing.
there. So
It's like
Sitka,
I equate it to bring everybody that anybody can relate to this. It's like driving your car with your lights off in pitch black. As you go drive
oh,
and you're just turn the lights off and drive. See what happens. Or maybe
well,
just
it
throw a
may.
little bit, or maybe just a little bit of light. Maybe just your little hazard lights or something. But
Well, yeah, you have a
there's nothing.
searchlight. So, like when you're shooting an approach to the water at night, you can't see anything till that searchlight finally hits the water. But you are totally
Yeah.
on instruments. It is as scary as anything you've ever done. And thankfully,
Yeah.
it's a two
Yeah.
pilot helicopter, right?
Yeah, totally.
So, I was reminding you a little earlier that when pilots go to Alaska, you have to be, I would say for the most, there's exceptions for everything, but for the most part, you have to be an aircraft commander qualified in that type of aircraft. You go to Alaska, you can't sign for the aircraft as a pilot in command until you winter over, because they're going to show you navigation routes all over the place. There's mountains. This is mountain flying, fjord flying, stuff you've never done before. Most of the Coast Guard flying is, flatlander, sea level
Right.
offshore,
Yeah.
unless you happen to be at a unit where you're around mountains. So when you're cast into Alaska, there's mountains everywhere. And to get to the other side of the island, you got to go through these fjords or canals, canals to get to the other side. So the first winter, you don't get to sign for the aircraft. It's all, you're the understudy, you're the apprentice, with the guy sitting next to you. So if we have time, we can do the case in Canada.
Oh, we absolutely have time. Hey, you want me to get into that now?
Yeah, now would be a good time. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'm in. We're going to divert real quick to thank our sponsors.
Breeze Eastern. For over 80 years, Breeze Eastern has designed and manufactured battle-proven aerial rescue hoists, winches, and cargo hooks. Each product is carefully crafted to support demanding mission scenarios, ensuring the job gets done safely and efficiently. Visit them today at www.breeze-eastern.com.
So you and your crew went out and actually did this super cool rescue out of Canada, and specifically out of Prince Rupert, Canada, which is funny as I was reading this, because I was like, I've been there. I know exactly where that runway is. I know you got to take a ferry to the mainland. I know, like, I've been there. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But so it was pretty cool. So you earned yourself a commendation medal, and there's a little write up in the newspaper. So I'm going to read the newspaper article, and then you also got something from the Canadian Coast Guard, which is cool. So let me start with the article.
Clarify.
So,
it wasn't
okay.
My crew. It was Charlie Ray's crew, former vice commandant of the Coast Guard. He was the pilot in command, because I was still my first winter, which made it even more scary, because it's like I'm seeing stuff I've never seen before or flown in before, and it's horrifying. So yeah, Charlie Ray's crew. Rick McElrath was the swimmer with us, by the way. If you know him, you know Rick?
I do not. I don't know Rick. No.
Oh.
Okay. I know. I got to meet all you guys. I'm actually, like I said, I'm looking forward to DCERT so I can meet more of you guys. I'm pumped. But all right, so let me get into this. And so here's the news clipping out of it. So U.S. helicopter rescues 9 Canadians from beach. As his fishing boat slipped beneath the waves, tossing the crew into rough waters of the Hecate Strait, Doug Hutchinson began to think he might never see his infant son again. Knowing it was his only hope for survival in the wild winter storm, Hutchinson started swimming for a nearby beach, fighting 1.5-meter waves fueled by 50-knot winds. When he finally reached the shore, he felt the sand between his fingers. Hutchinson was too tired to move. He had to be carried out of the water by his crew. I was really spent, he said Tuesday, as he recovered at his home in Prince Rupert after being plucked from the cold beach by the U.S. Coast Guard helicopter. Hutchinson is one of 9 people whose lives were saved in the remarkable international rescue efforts after 2 fishing boats and a Canadian Coast Guard vessel capsized in high seas. I'm going to fast forward a little bit further into the article. It says, by the time the Canadian Coast Guard cutter Point Henry arrived at 10:15 p.m., The winds were blowing furiously, and the waves were pounding the two fishing boats. An inflatable raft was sent from Point Henry to pick up the crew members, but it capsized, sending 3 rescuers and the crew from the Royal Pride into the water. They were able to swim to a nearby island. Meanwhile, the Gypsy Lass went under and Hutchison and his crew swam to shore. Since the Canadian Coast Guard did not have a rescue helicopter in the area, the U.S. Coast Guard helicopter was called from Air Station Base at Sitka, Alaska, 400 kilometers away. Canadian military rescue helicopters at CF Base Comex were not called because they were 600 kilometers away. They were also unable to fly because they would have iced up due to the weather conditions. An H-60 Jayhawk helicopter arrived from Sitka at about 3 a.m. and lifted 9 people from the beach. They were taken to Prince Rupert, where they were examined at the hospital and released. That's just the article. Like I said, then you earned yourself a Coast Guard Commendation Medal, which we.
So that wasn't.
Go ahead.
Wasn't completely. I'm gonna have to correct some stuff in there. I'm the one that sent you the article, but yeah, they weren't all on the beach. So yeah, it was also in a Reader's Digest drama in real life. So I did some studying on this to refresh my memory.
Oh, I love it.
I love it. So the Gypsy Lass, the skipper of that boat, was still on the boat, and he was up. So what happened here? A fishing boat went up on the rocks. So another fishing boat, Gypsy Lass, tried to save him. He went up on the rocks. Then a Canadian Coast Guard vessel, I think Henry, put a rigid hull inflatable in with 3 guys to go save everybody, and they capsized. Okay, so people are everywhere, right? So what ended up, the skipper of the Gypsy Lass was the only guy left on his vessel, fishing vessel. Let's say 5 guys made it to the beach, and they're hiding in the tree line because the wind is howling and it's cold. They're all wearing survival suits. And then 3 guys are basically missing by the time we get, they don't know where they're at. So that was the scenario.
Gosh.
So during the hoist, I think Jim Page was the flight mech. He'd never been on a SAR case before like this. I think for some reason they send swimmers and mechs and these other guys up to Alaska with no experience, so they're getting all their experience in Alaska, which can be kind of hairy. So, Jim was putting the basket down for the skipper to get into, and Charlie's having to hover in these 50-knot winds, and he can't hover into the wind because if he does, he can't see the boat. The boat's all up in these boulders. He can't see the boat if he hovers on the wind line, which we try to do for power, and everything works out better. So he's off the wind line by 50 degrees, and then to get the guys off the beach, same thing. He couldn't hover into the wind because his tail rotor would have hit the trees because there was just no shoreline there. So he had to hover off the wind for that, and I guess also couldn't land on the beach because of all the boulders. So ended up hoisting 5 guys in the basket there. And then, okay, I'll stop there.
Okay. Well, no, you know what? Keep going. I'll read the award at the end because, again, you earned yourself a Commendation Medal. So I'm totally going to read it at the end.
Read the award now because you got to see what happened next.
Okay. Oh, I'm pumped. Citation to accompany the award of the Coast Guard Commendation Medal to Lieutenant Richard K. Woolford, United States Coast Guard. Lieutenant Woolford is cited for outstanding achievement while serving as co-pilot aboard the H-60J 6022 on the night of 14 February 1994 during a life-saving rescue of 9 persons from the icy waters and rocky shore near Dungeness Island, Canada. The radar and night vision goggles' effectiveness were severely degraded in heavy fog, and they could not be used for navigation. During the 3.5-hour life-saving mission, Lieutenant Woolford relied on his skills and expertise using only navigation charts and the global positioning system to provide the aircraft commander with constant navigation guidance. Lieutenant Woolford worked quickly and accurately, navigating the rescue helicopter at and below 200 feet altitude in visibility less than 1/8 of a mile. His navigation had to be precise to avoid numerous islands that were higher than the helicopter's flight altitude. While searching for the last 3 survivors, Lieutenant Woolford located a reflection in the distance and guided the rescue helicopter to a rock where 3 remaining persons were precariously perched. This international rescue mission saved the lives of 9 hypothermic persons at night in horrible weather and an unfamiliar area. This case required the utmost skill, professionalism, and search and rescue expertise. Lieutenant Woolford's dedication, judgment, and devotion to duty are most heartily commended in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard. And it doesn't end there, because in addition to that, the MHS Conway Canadian Coast Guard gave it was. I assume this was to all of you guys, but this one's for you.
Everybody was invited to Victoria to receive this award.
Love it. So this award is presented to Lieutenant Richard K. Woolford of the United States Coast Guard for his involvement in the February 15th, 1994 Marine Search and Rescue incident, which the fishing vessel Gypsy Lass and Royal Pride went aground off Prince Lebu Island in recognition of devotion to duty and the lives of the fellow Marines in the peril at sea. Oh my gosh, Rick, this is sick.
So that's why I sent you that one. That's my most cherished award, the HMS Conway Award from Canada. I just thought it was way cool that we could go help the Canadians. I was thinking about later on, I was a commercial pilot. You can't fly low. You can't do some of the things we were doing in the military. Can't fly in weather like that. And
1/8 mile of visibility.
The ceilings were like 300. Well, the ceilings are 300 feet. Charlie's flying at 200 feet over the water, which is horrifying. I don't remember having goggles because I don't think we had them yet, but it was, all these articles say a little bit different things, but they said the Canadians couldn't fly because of icing. Well, how come the Coast Guard could fly? Because we have rotor blade de-icing, right? The H-60 has rotor blade de-ice. So we were flying in things that other people couldn't fly in. And that's interesting in itself, because when you start icing up, when you shed the ice, it makes a really bad shudder. And if it's shedding ice off your main rotors, it could go into your tail rotor. So it's just one thing after the other. I was horrified. It was that feeling like this is probably it. My first year in Sitka, there's nothing else after this. So it was very scary. I'll tell you that. But everybody did a great job, worked as a team. McElrath was the swimmer. He didn't get to deploy or anything, but he was in charge of the medical for those guys that we recovered. They're all in survival suits, put 9 of them in the back of the helicopter, really crowded, like a bunch of sea lions laying on top of each other. And I was concerned we'd have some type of crushing injuries or asphyxiation from, they're just laying on top of each other. But we didn't have to fly too far to get to Prince Rupert. And then they all made it, they all piled out. And they're Canadians, they all wanted to hug. This is before everybody hugged everybody. Now everybody wanted to hug. So I'm not a hugger. Anybody that knows me knows I don't smile, and I'm not a hugger. So it was hugs all around. Yeah, so it was nice. It was nice.
Wow.
Charlie wasn't able to go to Victoria for the award ceremony because he had to do something in Washington, D.C. So he missed out on that. So I got to represent the Coast Guard for the crew there, and that was fun. Wow. That was a good time.
Oh, that is super cool. Well done to you and your entire crew. 9 people. My gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, we were pretty stoked about the amount until later on there was a rescue where I think they rescued 24 people in the back of a 60, which seems impossible. I can only think that they must have been small people. I don't know. Yeah. I have no idea how you put 24 people plus the crew in the back of the 60.
Because you're not doing that with 24 Canadians. I'm just going to throw that out there, Canada.
You're going to throw that out there? Too much biscuit and gravy? Yep. It was Charlie Ray, me, Jim Page was the flight mech, Rick McElrath was a rescue swimmer, and AM3 Musselman was a basic air crewman. Now, why in the world did we take an extra person to go rescue 9 people? I have no idea. But he ran the radio. Okay, he ran the radio. And I think we must have thrown out the pump too, because you just don't have any room in there. So we must have thrown out the dewatering pump. There's different stuff you can throw out if you need more room. And I don't know if we had the folding stuff at that time. I think we might have had the old style back. Well, we had troop seats, but I don't know about the folding basket and the litter. If you could take it apart.
I still make more space. I think the Coast Guard is still using a rigid basket versus a collapsible. Okay. But the litter is that you pull that apart, and that's 2-part. 90% sure they're using that still. Oh gosh, I need to look that up. I'll double check.
So I'll leave you with a couple things here. I
love it.
I guess you get to wrap it up, not me, but it's your podcast.
Rick, you keep going. You can go all night long. I'm good.
So did Sitka, then went back to the Navy Training Command as an exchange. It's like an exchange tour because you're working for a Navy SEAL or a Marine Corps CO. I was an instructor, was a maintenance pilot. Loved the maintenance part a lot. I think I get along with machines better than people. I just love maintenance flights. But did that for 2 years. I was the maintenance officer, and then made lieutenant commander. They put me in charge of the helicopter instructor training unit. So I was the officer in charge of the helicopter instructor training unit for a year, which is I actually consider that to be my best tour. I just had fun with all those guys. I don't know why. I think it's easier to train a new student than to train a Navy helicopter pilot who comes back from the fleet after 3 years and thinks he knows everything about flying. Because my job is like, you're gonna go train new students. You got to drop all these bad habits. I don't care what you did in the Navy, at the fleet, or in the Marine Corps, but we got to do it the same way because we're teaching these new students. When they get out there in the fleet, they can learn their own things. But so that was a challenge. But I still got to fly with students and do cross countries and stuff like that. So then went back to Sitka, which my family wanted to do. I have 3 boys. They loved it. And you know why? Because you were in Kodiak. Alaska's way cool. Bad weather, fun. But so many cool things to do in Alaska. Yeah. So we went back. Oldest son graduated high school there. Air Force ROTC. He's now a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, navigator in big airplanes, which makes no sense. Nobody has navigators anymore, but the type of airplane he flies, got to have a navigator. Got to fly all over the world. He has so far. Very cool. Now he lives in Hawaii, so I get to visit him in Hawaii every year. So that's been nice.
Oh, that sounds rough.
Yeah. So anyway, 17 years air ambulance pilot here in Central Florida, which is great. I'm from Orlando, so I've gotten to fly everywhere from Jacksonville down to Miami, East Coast, West Coast of Florida, fly over Disney. It's way cool. So, I don't think the wife wanted me to keep doing it. It was so funny. After I retired, I went to the helicopter show in Vegas because I'm trying to figure out what I want to do, right? And she's, we're looking at all the helicopters. We're looking at the air ambulance. She goes, the one thing I don't want you to do is I don't want you to do this air ambulance thing. I'm like, why? She goes, well, I really think you need to be around all this, these hurt people and disease and all that. I don't know what she says. She just decided that's not what you're doing. So she's the one that found me the job in Bartow, Florida, as an air ambulance pilot. So I did it for 17 years, and finally decided to move on. So middle kid's a teacher, and youngest kid is he installs all type of audio, video, low voltage equipment, you name it, he can install it. That's what he decided to do. And 8 grandchildren, 4 girls, 4 boys.
Woo! Nice.
That's where we travel to see them mostly. I think that's why we go to Hawaii. Hawaii's expensive, but that's where the grandkids are. So yeah, we'll go there every year for now. Yeah. So all right, slip that in there. So
it's great.
Yeah, married 44 years. Yeah. So a couple of backstories. So we're talking about the equipment that the guys were using, and you go to these different units on the implementation, and when you show up the first time, they're all right out of Navy Rescue Swimmer School, and they got their stuff, and that's what they're using, right? You come back the next year, 1 year later, for a stand check, these guys are hiding all this other stuff they bought. For some reason, the engineering department let them buy all this. They think they're doing their own R&D, right? So they'll tell me, hey, Rick, we hid all the cool stuff that we use when you're not here. I'm like, why would you tell me that? I said, this is a standardization visit. We're trying to do this the same way. And Master Chief Farmer, like I said, he had the perfect personality for just saying, no, we're not, this is what we're doing for now. We're just too new. And he kept a standard. And then lastly, I'll throw in the watch story because Ober brought it up. So yeah, Ober's the troublemaker that got the watches. And he pitched it to Master Chief Farmer. It's like, no way. He's like, well, Master Chief, it's in the stock system. I found this watch because I talked to the Navy SEALs up at Little Creek. And this is I've got to have a watch because we're EMTs. And I don't disagree. I had to have a watch with a sweep hand, for heart rate, respiration, all that kind of stuff. Right. So,
of course.
Master Steve's like, no way. So one day, Steve comes up to the stand shop, 2 boxes in his hand, walks up to Master Chief. Which one do you want? The black one or the blue one? He goes, I'll take the black one. And then, Rick, you get the blue one. So I got the blue one. No words were said. No other words were said. Steve departed, and that was it. We were proud owners of a Tudor watch and a Rolex case, and that became a deal. That became a big deal. And they go, "You have Rolex watches? Why are these guys having Rolex watches?" I'm like, "Well, it's not really a Rolex. It's a tutor. And it was very affordable.
Oh my God, I love it. And from that day forward, all of us had watches. I'm just saying.
Well, it's part of the gear. You have to have a watch.
That's right.
Now, does everybody have sweep second hands, or some guy using digital, or what?
I think everybody has some sort of a sweep. I think it's
Yeah, I
actually
mean,
in the manual, or it used to be in the manual. You had to have a sweep second hand. So it was actually written in.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, we wrote it in. Okay, that's probably Daryl. Daryl likes cool stuff.
Probably.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Oh my gosh.
There you go.
Cutie.
You really got my brain going here, thinking about all kinds of things, but we'll leave it at this.
I love it.
Great opportunity.
Rick, thank you so much. Yeah.
Nothing but opportunities joining the military. Any young man or woman that's looking for something to do, even if they do 4 years, get out there and do some exciting stuff. I think I was selling tuxedos when I joined. It's kind of like, I got to go do something more exciting than that. I was working in a mall. Yeah. I was working in a big mall in Orlando, and it's like, I got to go do something else. So it worked out pretty well. What I would tell the swimmers out there, stay healthy, physically and mentally. Since your job requires you to get in the water by yourself, the number one thing you can do for yourself is stay physically fit. You may not agree with all that running around, and some people don't like to exercise, but that is the number one thing that's going to save your life, is your physical fitness. And on the mental side, if you have a bad rescue and need to talk to somebody, go talk to somebody, because that's a thing now for sure. And
for sure.
Yeah. But Butch is doing something really good with that too. Butch has a program he works with that people can go.
You know what? I'll put a plug in for that. It's Operation Restore Warrior. Totally.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, for all our swimmer brothers out there, you can contact Butch and go through the Silver Fin specifically. They'll help you get there. They'll help fund it. So it's good stuff.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Quinny. Been
Rick,
fun. I didn't think I'd have enough stuff to talk about.
Are you kidding me? Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate the history lesson and everything that has gone into this. I mean, like I said, you first 5, actually, and I'll even push it to you first 10. The first 10 rescue swimmers, you guys, you built something that said, everybody around you said, this is never going to happen. This is never going to go anywhere. It's dead in the water. What it has turned into today is incredible. And people from around the world, agencies from around the world, are looking at the U.S. Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer program and saying, okay, what can we take out of that? Like, there are guys that I know that are like, oh, look, I downloaded the Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer manual. We're pulling this stuff out of it because we can use it. So, and it's all started with you guys.
All right, awesome. Good. Did you get Master Chief Armor on here yet?
Not yet. I've asked him at least 3 times.
I'm gonna
pin him.
He's not getting any younger. You need to get him on here. Yeah.
I'm trying. I'm gonna pin him that when I see him at HAI. So I'm gonna get him in a corner, and hopefully he can't elbow me in the face and get out of it.
Yeah.
That's my goal.
All right.
But Rick, thank you so much for joining me. I really cannot thank you enough for just the stories, and from the very beginning. It's great to have you on and great to capture all this. So, very first United States Coast Guard rescue swimmer to have a deployment, free fall deployment with a life saved. Hoorah. Gonna love it.
Thank you very much.
It's good stuff. You're welcome. I will catch up with you at DCERT, and when I come down to Orlando, I might even give you a call when I'm down there too. Just throwing that out there. So,
okay.
If you're around.
Orlando for the HAI or what?
Just Orlando in general. I'm just going to call you. You're like, I'm in Orlando.
Do it.
All right. All right.
Okay.
I love it.
Thank you, Quinny.
Thanks, Rick. I'll see you soon, my friend. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here.
Go.
Now, it's time for me to pull chocks and take off. But before I go, I'm always looking for the memorable rescues that people have done. If you have one that you're willing to share or know somebody who has a story, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to highlight it here at the Real ResQ. For everybody that is standing by for that SAR alarm, remember, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. So until next time, fly safe and swim hard. Thank you for joining me today here at the Real ResQ podcast, powered by Vertical Helicast. We'd also like to say thank you to our sponsors for this episode.
Breeze Eastern. For over 80 years, Breeze Eastern has designed and manufactured battle-proven aerial rescue hoists, winches, and cargo hooks. Each product is carefully crafted to support demanding mission scenarios, ensuring the job gets done safely and efficiently. Visit them today at www.breeze-eastern.com.
And
Switlik. No mission is the same. Why should your suit be? Introducing a new custom dry suit experience. Choose your fabric, colors, neck and wrist seals, zippers, pockets, collars, and so much more. Intelligent measuring prompts ensure the most tailored fit. Brought to you by Switlik Survival Products. For more information, visit us at www.switlik.com.
go. And there she goes. Loading the car. She's leaving us both. See you later. See you this afternoon. Right, Rotoblade? All right, Rotoblade. You ready? Now she's gone. Let's go. Let's go have some fun. Ha ha!